Hey, folks, this is Ike, and we're down in Alabama. It's Sunday, February 1st, 2026. Now, this is a little different that I'm posting a short note to listeners, which I guess note can be spoken, so I'll do it. I wanted to let y'all know that we have a really short, really quick, really easy survey I'd hoped listeners would take, and I wanted to post this note separately from the regular weekday reports because I wanted as many people to take it as possible. The more people take it, the closer it is to scientific. I know it'll never quite get there, but the more we can comfortably rely on the feedback, if that makes sense. I probably will mention this all week, but not at this length. I just wanted to emphasize it to try to get more people over there. Some of the survey is going to be about just knowing the audience better. And I don't want to make it sound like it's going to be too long. It is just a few questions. Some of the surveys, knowing the audience better. Although we're not going to trying to glean any information, no email address or phone number, anything like that. And y'all know also we've had extended episodes during which I've interviewed folks or discussed a topic with a reporter who covers the issue. A couple in which I've cut the reporter's interviewing somebody else. A few that were just audio from an event, and even a spoken essay style segment or three from me that might have been somewhere between policy analysis and Southern culture commentary. So there are a few questions about those. Do you think it works better to make a short episode longer, for example, or would you prefer to make that stuff a different episode or different podcast altogether or whatever? I'm going to spend this week putting the link to that survey wherever I can. It'll be in show notes for this podcast episode. My goal is to overcome ADHD enough to remember to put it in show notes all week, and also in the Down in Alabama newsletter for those who go into both places, and the story post that appears on al.com each day. I'll probably bury it in that post because I'd prefer to limit this to listeners, maybe potential listeners. I know y'all don't come here to hear me talk about the show and myself, but we're a month into a new year. And as we brainstorm and evolve, I'd really prefer that news listeners have a voice in it. So please try to find that link in show notes or in an al.com post with my byline. I'll probably tweet out those posts, by the way, at Ike Morgan. So maybe now that I'm on the subject of this podcast, for newer listeners, we've picked up in 2026. I'll share a little about what the podcast is about, where we're coming from, the way we view news. We don't always do the 3, 4, or 5 biggest stories of the day, although sometimes we absolutely do. We want stories and topics that ideally are worth listening to for more than a few hours, since we publish only once a day. Also, rather than doing every little twist and turn of a longer arc story, we'll pick it up during key places in its evolution. So some of the criteria of our news curation are the biggest stories, trend type stories that represent more than just a single issue, stories that touch on themes we often see in Alabama, stories that relate directly to a large number of people, and simply entertaining or funny stories. I've never lived in a world devoid of humor or some kind of crazy. So that's absolutely part of life in Alabama. And we wouldn't be telling the whole truth if we didn't sometimes do humor for humor's sake. We don't take political sides here. This is a favorite topic of everybody, I think, for all kind of news. I'm speaking for me and other hosts and the podcast in general, not necessarily the guests. Increasingly, it seems you hear from other places, it's okay to be transparent, tell people who you're for, or in these times, we can't sit out the fight. Yeah, you can. You can accumulate as many facts as possible and share them as widely as possible. That seems way more valuable to me than telling people what they're wrong about. It doesn't mean there aren't truths, of course. And I know I've kicked in some analysis at times, but promise, cross my heart, it's always in an effort to add context to a story and not to try to push a political narrative or whatever goober happens to be running for office. Goober or Gomer, or brilliant statesmen and women called to serve. What else? I rarely vote, by the way, and I've caught flack for that. I think it's okay for journalists to vote, and I do it. I do vote occasionally, and I'm quite good at it. I do this weird exercise of not letting myself pick a candidate until I'm walking into the polling place. I know that is kind of disingenuous because I could certainly probably predict who I would vote for, a few months ahead of time, but I don't make that mental leap because, and this isn't just a journalist or news thing. I want all candidates every single time they step to a microphone to be trying to win my approval rather than me rooting for him or her to do well. We all know how confirmation bias works. I'm getting long and nerdy and self-indulging. So this is why I should stick to notes. I'm going to cut it off right here. Please take the survey. News is coming tomorrow morning on the show, I promise. And thanks for the latitude this Sunday afternoon. Y'all have a great one.